Hello and welcome back to another Action Game Maker tutorial. Today we're going to talk about menu scenes and how to set them up. So with that said, let's get started. Alright, so here I am in the menu sample project, and we're just going to show you how menu scenes work, where they go, how to call them, and what options we have with them. Then we're going to create a little small one, no inputs or anything, just a visual, and then we'll bring it up. Alright, so let's see exactly where I'm calling this from in the menu scene. And for that, I always like to have a HUD object. I'm just going to shift click on this, go to the UI right here, and then in the object right here, I have a menu caller. All right, and if I go to the scene, it's just real quickly, it has a script here, and this is just for calling the menu. So you can see that I have a wait area, which it's waiting for an input specifically. If I drag this out here, you can see that it is waiting for an input, and then it's also making sure that we can use the menu. So if the can't use menu is off, then we can use it. If it is on, then we cannot use it. All right, so there is a switch for that. You can package that however you want, but the main one is the input. So we have the input in which then it opens the menu, and we're going to be using open menu. And I'm also going to show you how to disable the layers as well. All right, but we'll come back to these options here in a minute. We'll make sure this is crystal clear. But I wanted to show you what's going on with this menu caller. You can see that if I would have known this when I was making it, I would have called it the HUD, because that's basically what this is doing. You can see that I have the HUD objects right here, the HUD elements. So here's my HUD with the panel, and then the magic portion is right here. And then this is the life with a heart control object that controls the heart gauge right here. And then here is the money down here with its own little panel. So you can see that this object I would have called the HUD, and then it would have just been a natural menu caller because the HUD's usually active in every scene. All right. So with that said, that's what this menu caller slash HUD is. Now, what exactly is the menu scene? So we can see that I have in the objects here, and then I have under UI, and it's right here. You can see that I have two things going on. I have a menu, and then I have a menu controller. All right. So the first thing I want to go over is this menu. This is a menu scene. So what I mean by this is that when I clicked on here, this was a menu scene right here. And when I click on this, you can see that all I really have is the menu scene, which this is a type menu scene. So that's how I know it's a menu scene, plus this little icon right here. And then it has a canvas layer usually, and then it has this object root node. So the thing is that the menu scene cannot have a script on it. And then the object root node, I want the object to be able to control properties with the nodes in it. So this can't just be a standalone game object like this, in which you then start adding nodes to. It can't be that because it needs to access it. So in order for that to happen, it has to be its own game object that you add to this. So I had to come over here, click on this, and add a game object. And this is when I called it or that was a scene. Let's see, don't save. Let's click on game object here. And this is where I called it the menu controller. So whatever menu it was, whether if it was a pause menu, or if it was a inventory menu, or however the menu is termed in yours, it would just be the menu controller for that menu. All right. This is going to be of type UI, all that good stuff, and then we'll just create it. All right. So I have this menu controller. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a canvas layer. Now there's already a canvas layer in the menu of it right here. So we don't really need one, but it does make it easier to place control nodes. So for example, what I mean by that is if I add a control node here and I add a panel, I can now go over here and I can say full rect, and it will bring up the whole camera area, right? Where if let's get rid of this right here, and if I just go to add a panel right here, and if I go to full, it would just go like this, and I would have to come in and manually do the layout. So I suggest just adding another canvas layer. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just redundant, basically. So I'm adding another canvas layer right here, and then I'll add, this is where you would organize your menu. And you can use nodes, you can use different things for your folders, but I'll just use, let's say, a control node for the folders. So this would be the main menu items basically. And then I would make another control node, and this would be for the options menu. And then I could duplicate this. And just so you know, there's multiple ways of handling this. You can do a whole tab system. You can do tons of stuff. But the way that I did it in the inventory method, because I relied purely on the visual scripting side of things, I found that it was really nice to organize them into these areas, so these pages, and then I would show them depending on which one. And how I would control them is I would control them via the object property switch. So basically, when the mode changed, it would turn on, it would hide and unhide certain properties of the visibility. So that's how I'm controlling it through the visual scripting. Now, if you're doing it through GD script, you might want to use more Godot methods of controls with the tabs and things like this. But as far as visual scripting goes, I found this one to be the most straightforward, is to just kind of organize them in these like little folder sections. You can see that this inventory right here has visual scripts, and then so these are just helper visual scripts for it, and then the grid images that I turn on and off through property I make visible or not. So that was mainly how I controlled the thing, was I set it all up with the sprites and everything, and I just controlled what was visible and what wasn't. That's basically all I did in this menu. So you can see how I like to organize it though, with the tabs and then maybe some sub tabs in here, and then you get down to the nitty gritty properties. And the reason why I suggest having them nicely organized like this is because they show up in a list in the properties section. So if you want to have some kind of a structure as far as what to pick, for example here, when you go to change the property, when you select the node, these are all in order how they are right here. So if you want to find your cursors, it would just be easier if they were all together. And you could even do cool things like, for example here, this will break the game, but you could rename it like this so that it would show up like that on the list, and then you would know that's the section for the cursors. So just some little things right there. But going back to what the point of this was, is this is basically just how I organized it. So real quickly, I was just going to kind of do a mock-up right here. So I had the main menu, which I'm then going to add a panel. So this would be the background for this. Now, quite honestly, you could probably have a full background right here. So we would just have one background, and then you would have all these for these. This would probably be the, I don't know, you could have a stats menu, and so on and so on. Okay, so you made your menu, and now you want to call it. So the first thing we got to do is we got to save this. So Control S, and then I'm going to go to my tutorial menus, and this will just be the menu controller. And I'm just, or let's just be specific, I guess, tutorial menu controller. So then we're going to save this, and then I'm going to come here. I like these to be the same name. So tutorial menu controller there, and then I'm going to save it. Now we got to go to the menu scene. So this is the tutorial menu scene. Now, your wording or your naming can be however you like it. I like to keep what is a menu scene versus what is a menu controller, because the controller is the one that's going to be changing the menus around. The menu scene is literally just going to be the container for it. And you're going to see that right here. I'm going to save it as the tutorial menu scene. And then in the object root node, all I'm going to do is instantiate the tutorial menu controller. All right. And so now this container menu scene now will do everything that the tutorial menu controller will do. And that's really all that's needed. So we have all of our controls right here, and then we have the container setup right here. So now we can actually call this menu. So there's a couple ways that we can do this. All right. I want to show you all of them. The first thing we can do is we can go to the player, or not the player, the menu caller. And instead of opening the path for the menu that I normally open, I can open this new one. Just got to go back up here to the tutorial menu, and I can open up the tutorial menu scene. I don't want to do the controller because the controller's inside the scene. So another way that you could do this is you could have your scenes in a specific folder. So I could have organized it more like the scene is outside in the main folder so that you know your whole list. And then your controllers are all in separate folders so you know where the controllers are. And I think I can still do that actually. So if I just said, this is for the tutorial menu, then I'll just hit OK. And then I'll drag these right into here. And so now I would have menu scenes on the outside, and that way it would be easier for me to pick them from the drop-down menu. So for example, I would go like this, and I would just see all my menu screens right here. Where if I wanted to edit the menu scenes, I know that I would have to go into the folders and pick the right controller. All right, hope that made sense. So yeah, everything still will work out just fine on this way of doing it. So that is the first way that we can do this. And let's see here, close the menu. We're just closing the last menu opened here. And again, I'll get in more details here first, just seeing that we can just real quickly play test this. So if we go out here and I press escape, it should pull up the menu. And you can see that it did because it kind of faded out or whatever. Press escape again, and it'll go back to the game. All right, so we successfully called the menu. That's a big part of the game. Is really all you need to know is to create a menu scene, put a controller on it, and then the controller will be your menu. All right, so what are other ways of displaying this? Well, we could go to each scene, and in each scene we have this UI root node. Now, this UI root node is not for the menu, although it could be. And what I mean by that is we could go to the root node here and we can instantiate the tutorial menu scene controller. And as you can see, we would have this on the scene as its own. And we could still access everything and do everything like that. The only thing that we would not be able to do is use certain runtime actions. And what I mean by that is if we go to the menu caller, we would not be able to use any of the open menus with it or close menus with it. So it would permanently be on the scene unless you had a manual way of hiding it through its code. So that is one legit way of doing it, is you could skip this whole menu scene completely and instead use a menu scene in this, I'll just say controller because I've been using it. Add that to the scene itself and then just provide your own input for hiding or not. All right, so if I play tested this, you would see that the scene is automatically loaded and there's really no way to exit it. Now you can see that I can overlap by calling the menu scene version of it, and you can see how it gets a little darker because they're overlapping a little bit, and then I'd be able to move back like that. But so that is one way of adding a scene, is you can just flat out create a scene and then just hide it on your own. That is totally one way of doing it. The other thing is that you can also add a menu scene already on. So for example, I can instantiate the tutorial menu scene itself. Now this is the scene, not the controller. So if I wanted the controller, I'd put it under this object root. But the scene you actually want outside of an object root. Even though they don't use the object roots anymore as of 1.0.14. So keep a note on that. But yeah, so anyway, let's get back to this part. This would be an actual menu scene. And so if we were to just go to the player here and instead, or not the player, the menu caller. And if we were to just go like that, let's do this. Let's make a shortcut here and then let's cut this and paste it right here. So we close the menu instead. Let's see if this will work. So basically, I have the menu scene on, and let me just verify. Yeah, the menu scene. So I have the menu scene on. Now, if I was to press escape, yeah, all menu scenes are hidden. So because I added it on this particularly, on this scene, it didn't register as a call for a menu. So therefore, you can't use the menu. Now, that's just for using the last menu. But if I do option 0, let's try 0 right here to select an actual scene to get rid of and see if it works. And no, it doesn't, because that doesn't exist. So yeah, just note that if you add a menu scene via this way, there is no way to get rid of it unless you're going through the menu controller. So in that case, if you're adding it on the scene, you might as well just throw the menu controller on here. All right, so I did want to go over that. The other thing about adding them on this is you would have to add them on every scene like that. All right, so now we know how to create them and the different ways that we can show them. Now let's go back into the menu caller here, into the script, and let's really more dive into how we want to show them and things like this. All right, so we did talk about how we want to press an input to go to the open menu portion of this. Now I want to show how I do the pausing and all this stuff. The method that I recommend using is disable layer. And you can see that, matter of fact, they have, if you use no argument and you click is exception, this means that it will disable all layers that are not selected. So if you have it on no argument, they changed this before the sample or after the sample was done. So if you have no argument selected and is exception, it will disable all the layers in the scene. So that's how we can just pause everything. And then we open the menu. And in this case, I showed you this, but we also can use transitions. We can slide right, left, up, down. We can use a fade. And then here is our time for that. All right. So that's the open menu. Usually want to do an audio with it. So you can see I just do an audio real quick. And then now the menu is open. So when the menu is open, you can see that on this link out to close menu, it's another input. We're waiting to see if the cancel input is put, or in this case, the start one. So I use the same input to open and close it, which is escape on the keyboard. And then you can see that that's really all that we're waiting for. Or there's actually one more here. It's elapsed time. So basically what I did was I took the duration time that I used, and then I put it as the time that I wanted, plus I guess 0.01 extra, just to give it enough time to open before I could close it. And so then when we press the input, it then closes the menu. And I have the close last menu because that is the last one that was open. It's pretty easy to keep track of if you're doing it that way. And the other thing is, though, is that every time that a menu is called, it is assigned a number. So if you wanted to, if you can remember what the number is, and I think it would be really awesome if we could actually assign a number to it ourselves, then you can more micromanage a menu if you wanted multiple layers of a menu or something like that. But for most cases, close the last scene is pretty good. And then I think the only other transition or the only other option we could use on this is close all, just everything. So that would be useful as well. But you can see we have the also transitions. Again, we can slide them, we can fade them, and then we can do this. This pause during transition, this is if you want the menu to be paused during this transition time. So for example, if you have, a couple options that your inputs can trigger, if you press escape and it was let's just say a second long transition time, during that transition of fading out, you would still be able to press the inputs and you would see the cursor move around. Otherwise, if this is checked, then you're not going to be able to move. It's just going to freeze that menu however it was, and it's going to exit the screen. I'm going to change this back to 1.0. All right. And then lastly, what this does is unconditionally, because there's no waits in here, it will then go back to wait, in which you're waiting for the menu. Now, this is where you could have break off menus. So you could have, this would be the inventory menu, this would be the other menu, and then if it required a different input or something, or maybe a variable that shows which one to open, you would have the link going into this right here. But this would basically be how you control it. And I like controlling it from the HUD object because it's just always going to be there. You're always going to want a HUD displaying on your game. And so it's going to pretty much be in every scene. And The other reason I like it on the HUD is because this disable layer doesn't touch the HUD. So when you're disabling the layer, you're only disabling the scene layers and not where this input kind of needs to be. So this is, again, just how I like organizing it. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, you can comment below. Go to the guild forums or the Discord. We'll get you figured out. That said, I'll see you at the next video.